Hi guys, in this video I'll be covering the major macroeconomic news that has occurred in the past week in the Americas and the EMEA regions. I'd like to start off with Americas first. I'd like to talk about Canada's monetary policy. So the Bank of Canada, the Central Bank of Canada, has decided to increase its interest rate for the sixth time by 50 basis points to 3.75%, and this is being done in the hope to see a generalized decline in price pressures and in order to control inflation. Moreover, the economy of Canada is overheated as of now, and this is because of high prices due to high demand by households and businesses to buy more goods and services. Canada's central bank has decided to increase interest rates in order to moderate economic activity. However, the central bank must be careful as interest rate hikes can have several consequences. One of them being an increase in the price of borrowing in financial markets, and this can restrict economic growth in the future. Next, I'd like to talk about the economic situation in the US and how they've begun to export record oil volumes as fuel price tension builds. The US has decided to take on a bigger role as a fuel supplier, and this is probably in response to the global energy crisis caused by the Russia Ukraine war and also after the announcement of cuts in production from OPEC Plus. The amount of crude oil and refined petroleum exported from the US has doubled since the start of 2022, and it has increased to 11.4 million barrels per day. However, the US should be wary as they might not meet demand in the future. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the economic situation in Mexico and how Mexico's central bank has decided to end the rate hike cycle. The Bank of Mexico has cautioned against monetary tightening as because the previous stance they took uh, turned out to be pretty aggressive, and as a result, interest rates increased to 9.25%, and are expected to go beyond 10%. Um, However, inflation is has reached to a decade high of 8.53%. Um, Despite of that, the Bank of Mexico has decided not to increase interest rates as this can only encourage consumers to delay consumption and save as an alternative, and this can restrict economic growth in the future. I would now like to move on to Europe, Middle East, and Africa. First, I'd like to talk about the economic situation in Germany and how economic growth has surprisingly increased despite a potential recession. Uh, Economic growth has increased by 0.3% in Germany, and this was driven by an increase in private consumption expenditure. However, the plunge in energy imports from Russia has sent energy prices spiraling in Germany, and inflation also remains high at 11.6%. And this is also primarily due to the energy standoff with Russia. High inflation has continued to put pressure on the European Central Bank to increase interest rates after it recently hiked them on Thursday. Uh, and this has fueled concerns of a potential gas shortage this winter as well. Next, I'd like to talk about the maritime border agreement between Lebanon and Israel and how this will benefit both the parties. The Israel and Lebanon have signed a maritime border deal that will allow for gas extraction. This agreement will allow Israel to gain control over the Karish gas field, which will allow the nation to supply gas to the entire EU, and this will benefit them economically as it will provide them with a steady flow of income and improve economic growth as a result. Lebanon, on the other hand, will have ownership over the Kana gas field, and for the same reasons that I mentioned above, they will also have a steady flow of income, and economic growth as a result will increase. Lastly, in the EMEA region, I'd like to talk about how the European Central Bank has convinced markets to turn more dovish. For those of you who don't know what this term means, it is a financial term and it refers to people who support low interest rates and an expansionary monetary policy system. So the ECB is on the verge of a dovish pivot as Eurozone is likely to head for a recession, meaning that the rate setters will ease the extent of rate hikes. Moreover, investors are pleased to hear about the central bank's plan to shrink its balance sheet, which is a major source of support to financial markets. Thank you for watching this brief summary video of what's been going on in the Americas and the EMEA regions over the past week. Lastly, please do follow our social media pages as listed above. Thank you and see you next week.